What's my purpose? Now, that is a big question. But here's my question for you. What's your money's purpose? Does your money have a purpose? Or are we just chasing money for money's sake? Are we building wealth, but not richness? All right. This episode of the Affluent Entrepreneur Show is a segment of a live keynote that I did about building a money purpose and the importance of that and how it starts to drive richness in your life. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to jump to that segment and I'll see you after the episode to close it out. All right. Enjoy. This is a really interesting session because the whole idea of purpose, it's a big question. And I sat there thinking about the theme, and here's this financial guy, this accountant that is going to talk about purpose. And I think that there's some things that I want to come to you with. One is I'll probably start off a little more philosophical than you would expect an accountant to do or a financial guy to do. And then we'll get tactical and we'll get to money and we'll really try to mold it around your money game and your wealth creation game, but really starting with this idea of purpose. And so I wasn't going to do this, but this morning I get up early and I was up at 4:30 this morning, and I usually do my writing, my journaling, and thinking. And this morning, I'm going to take you into my journal, which could be a little bit scary. It could be a little bit nutty, but I just want you to understand what I'm thinking about when it comes to purpose. Because I think that when you talk to a lot of people in the coaching and the mentoring and everything, when they are struggling with this idea of purpose, there's this angst around it. And I'm not sure that we need the angst. I feel like it's the angst that's going to keep us away from the purpose. And so hopefully some of this will give you some things to contemplate, some things to consider. And the first thing is to really understand that purpose doesn't, and this is where I think we disconnect, purpose doesn't necessarily mean that you'll be happy. Happiness and purpose aren't the same thing. And so we need to start to understand why we're looking for purpose, why we're looking for meaning, and what is going to truly give us happiness. I remember, I had a bike accident in 2009, and it was a mountain bike accident. I flipped my bike. I was riding down a hill, 25, 30 miles an hour because I was coasting as fast as I could. And I was right into the gym. I was angry. I was distracted. I was not paying attention. And my shoelace got caught. And I clipped the brake. I flipped the bike. It came down on my head on concrete. And before I knew it, I'm waking up with a grade 4 concussion. I'm stuttering. I have no feeling on the right side. And a dear, dear friend of mine, as I was recovering that next week, comes over. He says, "I'm taking you to lunch." Now, I'm in a neck brace. I can barely move. I'm sore. I don't know what's happening with not feeling, on the right side. And we go to lunch, and he's looking across the table at me, and he looks at me, and he says, "How much is enough?" I go, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "How much is enough? Because the reality is that the reason you got into this bike accident is because you were distracted, because you were angry, because you weren't present in the moment. And if you don't know where your finish line is, if you don't know what enough is, you'll get back on that bike, you'll go pedaling again, you'll go after it again, and you'll have another accident until you get the message." And it got me to understand that there's this drive for purpose that's not the same as the need for happiness and contentment and appreciation for what we have. But then the other thing that I realized is that purpose is likely not one thing. We seem to want to come together and say, what is my overall purpose in life? Now, I started to do that. But what I really realized is that I get different purposes. I have a different purpose as a grandfather. I have a different purpose as a husband. I have a different purpose as a mentor, as a coach. Now, I can look backwards, as Steve Jobs says, and start to connect things and see a theme across all of them, but that's actually, in retrospect, not looking towards the future. And so if we're okay with starting to understand that maybe, just maybe, I have more than one purpose, and maybe there's a purpose for this season, and maybe there's a purpose for this context, it allows you to have the opportunity to find yourself in purpose in the moment right now. The other thing that I wrote down was this: that purpose isn't and may not be in isolation. I'm I'll be married 11 years, and my purpose and my wife and I both have a combined purpose that we bring together. And to look at this and say that I don't need to be alone in my purpose. I don't need to be siloed in my purpose. And that it may be revealed to me over time. And truly purpose becomes more of the discovery on the journey of where we're going from. Because I came out of school, was going to be a typical accountant, realized that wasn't my purpose. That wasn't what I wanted to do. I wasn't happy. I decided that I was going to get out of it. And I kept searching and I kept searching. And what ends up happening over time is that it's a process of discovery. And here's the three things I think you need to start to unveil and allow your purpose to reveal itself. And the first is an openness to accept what is, an openness to accept the possibility that maybe it's a different path than what you're on, or an openness to accept that it is the path you're on. That doesn't mean that it's always joyous. And in fact, I will challenge that maybe there is a reason for that. So the first thing is to have an openness to accept. The second, I think, is to have a courage to act. There's so many people like I've got an identical twin brother. Yes, he looks exactly like me. We have our wives believe that we share the same brain, and it's just a matter of which one is using it at the time. So we look exactly alike, but he worked for someone for 35 years, and yet he was unhappy. He hated every day. He was dreading it every day, but he didn't have the courage to act until he did. He finally did, to make a decision, to make a change, to say, I wasn't destined for this. And so I think that if we have the openness to accept, we then need the courage to act. And then once we have the courage to act, then we need the dedication. Number three is to have the dedication to become. The dedication to become of who you were meant to be. I think if we really strip everything down to what we're here to do, is to live our lives fully expressed, fully immersed, fully experienced. So when we get to the end of our time, whenever that is, we can look back on that life and go, like the song says, I did it my way, and you have some peace. And so the question I have for you is that this was the question that I started asking myself, is that what story might you be telling yourself that's holding you back from your purpose? And it sounds like this: I will be happy when. I will do that when. I will experience that when. And if we're asking those questions or we're creating those stories, what we're really doing is creating an obstacle to us being open to accept, courage to act, and dedication to become. And so we might want to think about the book that Paulo Coelho wrote, The Alchemist, and his character Santiago in there, in realizing that, is it possible right now that your purpose is actually right in front of you, right in your backyard, right in front of you? And it's the lack of openness that allows you not to see it. I know for me, I pushed back on doing a lot of this financial stuff because I didn't want to be seen as a CPA again. And it took It literally took a cancer and a pandemic to open my eyes that this was the next season and the next step in a journey of purpose. And so the key then allows you to sit back and say, in order for us to have the courage to act, the openness to accept, and the dedication, we need to be present in the moment. And we have all kinds of stuff like this and social media and all the distractions, as Brendan was talking about, that get in the way of being present. Brendan is the one that helped me understand the need that when my wife was out in the field, when she used to work out in the field and she would come home, I'd be working on my computer. Hi, honey. Brendan's the one that said, have you ever stopped for a moment, put everything down, and been present for her as soon as she came home? And I will tell you, that 15 minutes were magical for our relationship, magical for the connection at that point. And so in that 15 minutes, I had a different purpose. And that purpose was to serve and allow my wife to feel loved in the moment. And so it's this process that I think happens. And then the other thing that I journaled as we start to move, I'll move this into money, is this idea that purpose is actually not a destination. I truly don't think it is. When I look at the different purposes that I've landed on over the years, over time, purpose is actually a journey. Purpose is something that just unfolds. And if it's a journey, there'll be difficulties on the journey. And the difficulties, I think, will fall into two categories. If we truly want to live our fullest potential, there'll be challenges and growth and difficulties around the craft. In other words, what skills do you need to learn? What knowledge do you need to have? What education should you get? When I work with people with money, this is one of the things that comes into play, is that there's a process of education. They need to skill up, if you will, for wealth creation, because we're not taught it. We're not talking about it. We're not having these conversations. It's not taught in school. We take it in through observation. So there's one level of category of difficulty, and it's through the craft, perfecting the craft. The second is just on the journey. That there's going to be difficulties on the journey. You're going to have obstacles thrown at you. You're going to have things put in front of you. You'll have health concerns, relationship concerns. You'll have work concerns, business concerns. Someone might sue you. Someone might steal from you. All those things are truly gifts in your path to growth. And it is that path to growth and the ability to say that I'm on a path of growth, personal growth. This is why Growth Day is here. This is why we journal. This is why we're in a community, is because it is through that growth that we feel more purposeful. And Brendan used that term earlier, but the reality is that I think the key to finding your purpose and being on purpose is not purpose itself, but it is the pursuit of purposefulness. It is the pursuit of purposefulness. That's what I think will give us joy. That's what's given me joy. When I've been on the pursuit of being an intentional, aware, and conscious each day in my life of what comes, so I can be gracious, grateful, and generous with it. That starts to deliver and change the way that we're doing things. And so it might be more a situation of us trying to understand what our purpose is for now versus our purpose is forever. because now I have a specific purpose. The last 3 weeks, my purpose got changed. My mom went into the hospital. We weren't sure what was going to happen. Brendan and I even had a conversation about it. She's out now. Okay. She's got a road ahead of her. But in a moment when I got the call, purpose changed. And so I look at it and say, each step, each day, as long as it's intentional and purposeful, then am I not living on purpose? Because that's the way I think we start to grow. When we look at it and we say, I'm here working on my purpose, when we declare that, when we put it out there, the funny thing that happens is I'm working on my purpose, and my purpose is working on me. And I become something different by virtue of being on a journey of purposefulness to make that happen, and intentionality. That is something that comes about for a lot of people when we start to talk about money. And I'm going to bring this to you in the sense of now looking at money, because it's a material possession, if you will, but it's a tool. Here's the thing, that as we start to understand money, money is not a purpose. It never is. It never will be. If that is the driving force, then I'm as direct as I can possibly be, with as much love as I can possibly put out there. It's a sad life. I've watched people chase the dollars, and they're unhappy in the end. They're lonely in the end. And so it's the reason that why we talk about the idea of richness in life versus wealth in life. Richness is experiences, feelings, and all that. And so if money's not a purpose, then what is it? It's a result. It's a fuel. It's a tool. That's it. It's energy. So the question, when we start to build wealth, and I'm going to give you tactically something that I want you to do, what we need to start to understand is, how do I give my money greater purpose? And when I give my money greater purpose, my money gives me greater purpose. So it's not about the purchasing power of the money that matters, but the delivery of the enrichment in life that it creates. And when we start to look at money through those eyes, that's when all of a sudden it makes sense to do things with money, to change the way we spend and that type of thing. One of the things, and I don't have the time to do the exercise in as much depth here, that I do with some of my clients, is we actually create what we call money purpose statements. So let me walk you through this, and I'll bring a couple things on the screen. It might be easier if you have me on speaker view. They have me spotlighted, so it should work fine. But let's just talk about a spender for a moment. Someone who didn't have money growing up. They maybe lived check to check. Their parents lived check to check. They were in debt. Maybe there was foreclosures. There was bad experiences. And all of a sudden they have money. And they're out there going, woohoo! And they're spending. And they're spending like crazy. And they can't figure out why they have no wealth and they have no wealth creation. And so when we create a money purpose statement, then everything is directed through that filter. So if I just go, I'm just going to go to the money purpose statement for this, so you can start to see how this plays out. Because I want you all to have a money purpose statement. So I'm going to bring this on the screen. Well, what happens if the spender has a money purpose statement that is in front of them, just like a personal purpose statement that says, my money's purpose in my life is to provide security and peace of mind to my family and me, while allowing me to live my truest joy. And what ends up happening is that every time the spender is making a decision to, should I spend or should I not spend? And they run it through this filter and they say, is it providing security, peace of mind to my family, and allowing me to live my truest joy? And if the answer is no, all of a sudden the spender doesn't become a spender. The spender becomes someone that is purposeful with their wealth and their wealth creation to make a difference with it. But what happens if you don't have a spender, but you have a saver? The saver is someone that's sitting back and saying, I grew up with no money and therefore I'm just going to hoard it all. They live a miserly life. They're not creating anything. They're not enjoying anything. They're not experiencing anything. They keep that in play. Well, then I had a client like that and we worked through it. And this was a version of their money purpose statement. Money's purpose in our lives is to share, because if we're holding back, we're not sharing, okay? And enrich my family and community while creating happy, meaningful times for those I love. Well, now all of a sudden, the filter for using money, for creating wealth, is through a filter of sharing and enriching and creating something meaningful for the people they love. And so when you look at this and say, how could I create a money purpose statement that starts to drive the decisions that I'm going to make? Let's look at one more. This is the what I call the measurer, okay? And the measurer, if we start to look at it and start to understand, the measurer is that person that is judging their worth based upon what they see on social media, on the media. They're comparing themselves over and over again to other people. They're seeing people that are parading their Lambos or their jets or their yachts or their crazy vacations and all these things as if it's their reality daily, and saying, wow, I'm not worthy. And so nothing is good enough for the measurer. But when we give them a money purpose statement, something that's meaningful, things shift for them. The measurer, my money's purpose in my life is to help me connect and create while serving those I align with. Okay? Hopefully you start to see how a money purpose statement starts to drive the choices and the decisions that you make, because the fact of the matter is wealth creation is a behavior. It's not about money statistics. It's not even about how much you earn. It's a behavior. And if we shift our behaviors just like a mission statement or a personal statement or a vision statement, things shift for us. And when we change our behaviors, our money changes. So how do we do this? Okay. Well, here's a format. It's one of the formats that we can use. We start off with just saying money's purpose in my life is. And so the first thing is I want to put in here what my money is going to do. What is my money going to do? Give it a task. Every dollar needs to have a task. I'm going to tell you exactly how to task them in a second. I'm going to walk you through a framework. Okay? But while it's doing that, while the dollars and the investing and the spending or the money is doing that, what is it supposed to do for you? And this is a possible simple statement that you can use, that you can put up there, that will start to refine and define how you show up for your money and what your money does for you. The true idea of wealth creation and financial freedom is to make sure that your money works harder for you than you did for it. Hopefully this makes sense. If this is making sense, do me a favor, let me know in the chat. And I've been going for a bit. And then I'm gonna shift gears. I'm gonna get a bit more tactical here, okay? Because I think that now, if we start to understand that money has a purpose, but is not a purpose, and that when we give money a higher purpose, we show up greater in our lives. All right, I hope you found that value. I hope that you're gonna start figuring out what is your money purpose, creating a money purpose statement so it starts to drive not only your wealth, but the richness in your life. So if that was of value to you, do me a favor, let me know. If you've got questions, let me know. But in the meantime, I've got a couple of other trainings and videos I'm going to set up here for you. I think are the next steps. One is understanding what an affluent life is. All right, so I'm going to hook that up here. And the other one is, what do you need to do with your cash? How do you allocate your cash? So now that you have a money purpose, what specifically do you do with each dollar? In other words, every dollar that comes in will have a specific purpose. All right, so check those out, and I'll see you in the next episode or on the road. In the meantime, always strive to live a life that outlives you. Cheers.